Hey, if you like listening to this podcast, you might like watching the clips too. You can check them out on youtube.com/Bill Simmons. Clips from all the latest episodes, clips from 6 years of episodes, complete podcasts, episodes of the Rewatchables. It's all on there. Check it out. youtube.com/Bill Simmons. There's so many plans I'm really looking forward to this year. I mean, going to live music, going to see some sports, going to play some golf, going to play some different golf courses, relaxing, hitting some golf balls. Everybody's going to spend their summer differently. When you're with Amex, you're bound to leave any experience with a whole new story to tell. American Express, don't live life without it. Learn more at americanexpress.com/withAmex. This episode of the Bill Simmons Podcast is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com may not be the flashiest of names, but they are really good at helping you book your perfect trip with over 28 million hotels, resorts, motels, vacation rentals, everything in between. Booking.com has pretty much every kind of place for every kind of trip, which is helpful and easy, and that's pretty cool. Download the Booking.com app and make your next vacation easier. Booking.com, booking.yeah. We're also brought to you by the Ringer Podcast Network. I think I'm popping on the Prestige TV podcast at some point over the next 2 days with the Paulie Walnut's Sopranos Hall of Fame episode, me and Big Waz and Van. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't checked out Derek Thompson's new Plain English podcast, he did a little mini reaction pod over the weekend to Elon Musk's Twitter deal falling apart. It's really good. That is an excellent podcast. Check that out as well. And then a new Rewatchables is coming on Monday. And all I'm going to tell you is this. It's one of the biggest ones we've ever done. It's just me and Chris Ryan. It's the OGs, the originals. And you will not be disappointed by the movie choice. That's all I'm going to tell you. We'll put it up midnight Eastern time on Monday night. So that's happening. And then just a programming note on this podcast. This is the second to last podcast of July for me. So we have one coming middle of the week as well. And then that's it. I'm going away. And not actually going away. I'm just going away for the podcast. I'm refueling my batteries. Been going straight pretty hard here for a couple of years and needed some time to refuel my batteries, get ready for football season, playing some Ringer stuff, playing some Spotify sports stuff, and just take a step back. And when I come back in mid-August, it's all going to be worth it because I will have fully recharged batteries. I will be ready to go from mid-August on all the way through. And we'll do that 10.5-month content stretch again. I still love doing this podcast. I'm excited for this one. Ryen Russillo is coming on. Our last Sunday with him until I'm sure he'll pop on a couple of times during the NFL and NBA season. But this is our last Sunday with Russillo. And we have a very special treat for you. It is a 2022 trade value list that I made that I've been working on for really the entire playoffs and then the offseason. It's a gimmick that I used to do. I think it was 2000 on my old website, Digital City Boston. I was trying to figure out a gimmick that I could do that I could rank players, but do it a little more creatively than just ranking the players. And I thought about them as trade assets. One thing led to another. All of a sudden, I'm making tiers. I have parameters. And it was something from 2000, I think through 2015, I must have written every year. Because I remember at one point at Grantland, we posted all of them. And along with the NBA Draft Diary was one of my favorite pieces to write. I would spend a couple weeks on it. Not just coming up with the list, but actually like writing out the blurbs, trying to figure it out, figuring out the salaries. It was a lot harder during the ESPN days just to even find the salaries, find accurate salaries. Now it's a lot easier. Now we have a spot track. Now we have so much more intelligence. I think one specific thing has changed in 2022 that affected the trade value list. And we'll talk about it with Russillo in a second. But it was fun to bring this back to life. This is a workshop list. We're going to try to finalize it as we do the podcast, but I have my tentative list that I'm bringing into the podcast, and then Russillo and I are going to workshop it. It is all next. First, our friends from Pearl Jam. All right, Ryen Russillo is here for the last time. He is in Las Vegas for Summer League. We're going to talk about it at the end of this podcast. We're going to do a little Summer League. We'll talk about your trip, the whole thing. We'll save that as dessert. It's time. It's Trade Value List 2022. I sent you my list a few hours ago, so you would have it. We're going to react. We're going to argue about some stuff, and a couple caveats. One, this is not a list of players. Salaries have to matter at least a little bit. And it's always the question of, would I rather pay Scotty Barnes $5 million or Bradley Beal $50 million? That's a huge piece of it. You got to think about years left on the contract. You have to think about how realistic is it that either one team would trade for a guy or that a team would want to give up a guy. And then it all comes down to the premise of, if Russillo's a GM of one team, I'm a GM of another team, and I call him for a player and offer a 1v1 trade, who says no faster? Who hangs up faster? What's that whole process? So, Russillo, I think the biggest thing that's changed in 2022 that I did not have to deal with in 2000 when I first created this whole gimmick is the concept of, can I convince a player to come here and will he be happy? You cannot do this in a vacuum anymore. Like, we can't do, if it's like Kevin Durant or, I don't know,
Paul George.
Pascal Siakam, straight up.
All right.
Right? And if I have to talk Kevin Durant into being happy in Toronto, that is now a factor in this deal because of a dynamic you and I have talked about constantly, which is, it's not just the contract, it's whether the player is happy in the situation and in the contract. So the reality is the trade value was just more fun 20 years ago.
Yeah, because it's still, you go through the list and you start thinking, like, do I have to worry about the feelings in a guy in the 40s? And that's where I think this is all going, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, you think there's going to be some people getting mad that their ranking was off?
Yeah, seriously. That could be like the second guy off the bench, the seventh guy in the rotation. He's like, I just don't think I can win with these guys. It's going to happen, and I kind of can't wait.
Well, let's get into it.
Let me start by just saying something, though, because I did spend some time looking at it. If you publish this, it would be met with immediate, like, whenever somebody does something like this, the first reaction is like, oh, that's stupid. Oh, this is wrong. This is terrible. Because then I started doing it based on how you broke it up. And it's a really, really hard thing to do that's also very easy to rip apart, while anyone else that would provide theirs would be just as easy to rip apart.
Is that your way of saying you didn't like the list?
No, I did like the list. I liked it a lot. I obviously have disagreements, but when you're sitting there going, let me come up with 60 plus guys in 5 or 6 different tiers, there's nothing like, it's like when ESPN does their top 75, most of it makes a lot of sense. And then there's like a couple where you're like, what the hell is wrong with you guys? And then everybody will just be like, oh, that list is stupid. And you're like, well, a couple were wrong.
Well, before we get into it, I just want to say how much talent there is right now. Because I remember, especially in the mid-2000s, just trying to get to 40 was a chore. Like a legitimate chore. We're like, oh my God, do I have to put Nazir Muhammad in the top 40? We didn't have 40 players that you would have considered massive assets. In this case, my list is 64. I did 64 in case the Ringer gets super bored this summer and wants to have an actual bracket and do a 1 through 64 bracket and just pit people against each other and have people vote and see how that goes. So we did 64. We also have a pretty healthy honorable mention of like 17 or 18 guys. I'm just going to go through it quickly. You stop me if you get excited about any of these names. Honorable mention. Kyle Kuzma. I like his contract, $13 million a year. Solid starter. Not good enough for the trade value. Jaden McDaniels, who we found out apparently had an incredible amount of value to Minnesota, since they were touting that they didn't have to throw him into the Gobert trade. They were all excited about that. So I'm just putting him on there for that. Caruso. Alex Caruso, I like the contract. What is it, like $9 million a year? I know that guy can play in the playoffs. You have any problem with him? Honorable mention?
No, not at all. I thought he was a really important part of, the Bulls are a separate topic altogether, but it's like you want guys like that on your basketball team.
Yep. Vucevic was honorable mention for me. He's in the last year of his contract, which I think has to play in at least a little bit when you're thinking value. I didn't I thought he was good, not great. He's $25 million a year. I thought they kind of overpaid looking back at what they gave Orlando in that thing. And it's not that excited about it, putting him in the 64 over some of these other guys. Were you surprised that he didn't make it?
No, not at all.
Okay, good. Gary Trent Jr., 3-and-D guy, about $16 million a year. If he was like at about 8, I'd be more excited about that one. John Collins, who we know should be honorable mention because they tried to trade him for 2 months and couldn't figure out how to do it.
2 months.
7. You might break the record for under your breath one-liners during this, by the way. You already got 2. CJ McCollum, who I honestly, if he was making like 17, 18 million a year, I think would be on the list. But I think the salary makes it just a little harder to deal him, as we saw with the Portland New Orleans trade in February. First rookie, Ben Mathurin. We could put rookies on the list now. He's the highest drafted rookie that did not actually make the top 64. We'll see. But, by January, he might be 40. De'Aaron Fox is on here. I don't love his contract. I would not have even had him honorable mention 2 months ago, but I thought both you and I were impressed with him with the Sabonis trade, how he looked after that. So I think he's still intriguing as an asset. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I even think this is a little harsh for him because you still feel like you have to have an open mind. I mean, 2 years ago, he would have been in your 64 without question.
Yeah.
So he gets the contract that those guys get. Best player, high pick. So I'm not the biggest fan. You and I would talk throughout all those late game situations with him. And I think maybe the overall stat, I don't remember like if it's one of those things where it's like, man, the overall stats ended up not looking as bad as some of the visuals, but it just felt like I'm going to force this. I'm going to do it on my own. He just has to break that habit. Like if he can break that habit, he's still a really dynamic player. So this feels low, but it also feels like this is the lowest his approval rating's probably been since he's been in the league.
I'm going to bold him in case there's anyone in the 64 that you talk me out of. Wendell Carter, we really like because of the contract. I think he's like $14 million. Steve Cerruti, who our beloved friend and producer, I don't think would trade Wendell Carter for DeAndre Ayton straight up if Ayton's going to make $30 million a year. But I also don't know if that's rational. We'll get to Ayton in a second. But anyway, he's honorable mention. So is Rob Williams, who has a fantastic contract. I think you could make a case he should be in the 64, but the injury history, I think, is he just has to prove he can play for 8 straight months, I think. But I was surprised I left him off. I couldn't make the case for it. I don't know if I was being too much of a homer. What do you think?
No, the injury part probably puts him out of it because this is a constant. I mean, the reason he got the contract he did is because they were always worried about his injuries. And after seeing a couple of the games live as well, I'm like, is he just a guy that looks hurt all the time, or has he just been struggling this entire playoffs? And I think more people will tell you it was the latter. There were so many different times I was like, oh, he might be done. He might be done. So for that to get figured out, even with a really nice contract, it would feel aggressive to say there's 390 players behind him.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like that. He is that guy who always seems like he's a little bit injured when you're at the games. It's like how I'm sure you have the friend who always seems a little drunk, even though you're not drinking. Like, was this guy drinking before? What happened with this guy? No, he's just always like that. Seth Curry made honorable mention. Now he's on the last year of his deal. His deal is only $8 million. I think if I had him for like 3 for 24, I would have put him on because I really value what he does. And I think if you put him, we saw what he did. I thought he was the best. Other than Jimmy Butler, I thought the best kind of wingman for Embiid that we've seen during Embiid's entire career offensively. And at last year of his contract, I couldn't do it. Simons is another one that I think would have made it, but he just got this $100 million 4-year deal that I know you have some feelings on.
Yeah, I felt like this was a very early Anthony Simons podcast, very early on that, where I was talking to guys up there at the time that were like, wait till you see it. And then you're kind of watching it going, wow, there is really something here. What a nice pick. And then it's $100 million. And whenever we do, and it's like, oh, I would have liked him better at 78.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's not the way it works. There's usually about a 20% tax beyond what you think would be the right number. I still think we have the cap spike hangover of looking at some guys being like, oh, I think I'd like him at 12. Well, if you're any good, you don't make 12. you make more. You just make more. So he lit it up last year. The shooting was terrific, but that was a team that was trying to lose every game. And you needed internet service when you watch Trailblazers games. Like you needed to go, wait, who the fuck is out there?
Yeah.
And so I'm always a little afraid. Like there's a lot of dudes, like Davion Mitchell might be terrific, but there's a lot of arguments made for players in those ends of season situations where you'll be like, well, did you see what this guy did here? Or did you see this assist ratio? Or did you see all these different things? It's like, yeah, but what was the team trying to do? So he shot the hell out of it. I really like him, but with a healthy Portland all the way back, maybe they just look at him as, hey, he's a younger CJ and he stays healthy and we're fine. And we're actually paying him less than McCollum's $31 million plus the next couple of years. So I get it. It felt a little on the pricey side.
That's a contract that is a make or break contract in a lot of ways for teams. If they can hit either the future superstar, but you're getting him at a 30% discount, or going the other way, the guy that you think might be a star and you're getting a deal at $25 million a year, and then it turns out he's like a $10 million player. We see mistakes and wins in that, I think like that 17 to 25 range.
We'll I mean, with him. He was 43% from three last year, and then he basically doubled the output and still was over 40% from three. But
I like him. If you told me like yes or no on that contract, I'd probably say yes, because I think it would have been risky for them to bring it to the next year. And then what if he's like a $30 million guy next year? So I'm okay with it. Dylan Brooks, classic honorable mention guy. He may have replaced, I think this is the year he replaces CJ McCollum as the guy who's going to be in the most trade rumors. I just think he'll just get thrown in there. I think people are going to be making up a lot of 3-for-1 trades with Memphis, and he'll always be leading those. I value what he does, and I like what he does. Lou Dort, same thing. I would have had Lou Dort on the 64 before the new contract, but now I think he's now fairly priced, 5 for 87. Good 3-and-D guy. And then the last two, Draymond, I'm just putting on there out of respect. I think he means more to Golden State than any other team. The last two games he played in the finals were great. He's in a contract year, so I would actually be more bullish on him this year. The age and the shooting numbers are, I think, the two obvious red flags. And then Kuminga was my toughest cut. I just couldn't totally get there over the 64 guys that I had in there. Would you have put him on there?
No, I went through the list. I think that's still a huge benefit for the doubt thing for Kuminga. And, maybe would I name 64 guys that I would trade before him, which is really the exercise that we're going through here. Maybe that's why he ends up there. But, there's also a version of events here where maybe it just doesn't click, right? Like, are you still open to that possibility?
The Summer League game 2 days ago, people were pretty alarmed. You're going to see them. We're taping this right now. It's a little past 1. You're seeing them in person a little later. You're really going to see Wiseman.
I'm going to see Wiseman.
And you'll talk about it on your podcast. But yeah, Kuminga, I love him. I couldn't believe he couldn't make the list, but I just couldn't justify it because we don't know where we're getting with that. It might just be this awesome athlete who never puts it together. I think he's worth more to the Warriors than anybody else because they've seen it in practice every day. So whatever. All right. So that's
okay, but just to do the exercise here, I should keep letting you go through the groups.
Yeah. We'll bold them.
Right.
So the two we're going to
put a bold on Draymond for me and Kuminga, actually. 2 Warriors here. Early.
Okay. So we're going to bold those two. We'll bold De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, good.
And then before we get to the 64, we made history. We've had 3 players disqualified from the list. There's a dishonorable mention. I'm just refusing to put them on. Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons, and James Harden. You're not allowed to be in the list. I have DQ'd you. You're out. Done.
All right. I'll tell a story. Because I'm in it. Every single NBA person's running around here. It was actually kind of funny story. As I was headed back up to my room, I grabbed a dinner with Kansas Jayhawk legend Eric Chenoweth, and I was like, all right, I'm calling it. And a couple guys came running over from the craps table to say hello, and they're pretty excited. Big Magic fans flew in just to watch Paolo. So shout out to those guys. And as I was talking to them, they were really nice about it. They were like, hey, we didn't want to bug you or whatever. And I was like, no, it's cool, man. Thanks a lot. We talked to little Paolo. And then Will Hardy walked by. And I thought maybe with the Boston thing, And I was like, hey, man, congratulations. He had no fucking clue who I was. Zero.
Well, he's the San Antonio guy, right?
And so, right. It wasn't like he was in Boston 10 years. But I was just saying, hey, congrats. And it kept it moving. Whatever whole deal was really nice. Could have been nicer. But then the guys looked at me and I was like, see? I was like, he had no idea who I was, and I had no idea who you guys were. And it's cool. We could all say hello to each other. But the reason the story's funny is that Ben Simmons was, hanging out, kind of mingling around, whatever. And I was with a couple other people, and we were watching people stop to get their picture with Ben Simmons. And one of the guys in the crew goes, can you imagine wanting your picture with him right now? Which is super harsh and not the way pictures work with celebs. Yeah. But to have him on the dishonorable mention, when I saw that email and I thought of one of my buddies from last night going why did you even do that? And I'm like, well, because that's what people do, man. I was like, it's what people do. They see somebody, and that's why this is such an amazing experience for any NBA junkie. If you just keep milling around downstairs, you're going to see everyone in the league. Yeah.
Well, those three are out. I think Harden has a chance to play off it. He's going to be on it looks like a shorter money deal. I don't know how they work that out. It could lead to one of the big scandals the league's ever had, trying to figure out how he just gave up $50 million.
All right, just so everybody knows, he opted out of 47.4, I think, and then signs 2 years for 64.
Yeah.
And it's a player option in the second. So now I am all over the place with this one. Can we do a minute or two on this?
Let's do it. And then we'll take a break and we'll get to the list. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm
no, this is why we're doing it. You're not derailing anything.
But from a negotiating standpoint, did Daryl and the front office and ownership go to Harden and his reps and say, hey, you're not taking cap space from anyone else. You're not. You don't want to play in Detroit. You don't want to play in San Antonio. You're let's run through it. Orlando had to have moved some things around. So we know you don't want to go anywhere. All right. Did they play hard?
We know you have nowhere to go.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, same thing.
Which is both things.
Or is there such trust? Is there such trust with Daryl and ownership that they went, take the $15 million haircut, because that's what it is now, and then play for 32. They're about $4 million or so. I don't know what the final numbers will end up being, below the hard cap, which was a huge problem because if he had opted in, then they weren't going to be able to sign all these other guys. So we make the team better. All of these things seem really selfless, but I can't help get past, does it mean he's just going to opt out next year? And then he knows he's got a new extension where his math is I have the new longer extension that adds on a year that I may not have gotten a number, as opposed to just waiting a year and making 32 this. I'm not going to just make up 15. I'm going to make up even more, because whenever I was a free agent on a new extension, whatever that new year would have been, it would have been close to what I'm going to get on a Philly extension for next summer. I have no idea. I have no answers. I have no insight. I'm just wondering out loud.
We've only seen it in NBA in recent history with Nowitzki in Dallas, where he played there his whole career, and there was an incredible amount of trust with him and Cuban. And along with me making jokes about how Cuban was buying his documentary for $45 million and all those kind of fun jokes.
Did Cuban like those jokes?
Probably not. The Patriots did it with Brady. Brady would take less than what he was worth, right? Forever. And then eventually got pissed off about it. This doesn't make a lot of sense. Harden been on the team for 5 months. And I know he has a good relationship with Ruben and with Daryl. It's a pretty big sacrifice. And,
but Ruben's technically out now anyway, right?
Well, yeah, but if you read the articles, it was him and Daryl and two other people negotiating the extension. So I don't know what to believe. I guess we'll find out more. He might be able to play himself off the list. If it's 1 year, $32 million, and he looks awesome next year, there's a chance I do this same list on the All-Star break and he's 28. Simmons and Kyrie have no chance to make the list again. So there you go. They have been disqualified. It's like in victory, the goal has been disallowed. These three players have been disallowed. We're going to take a break and then we're going to do the top 64. There's so many plans I'm really looking forward to this year. I mean, going to live music, going to see some sports, going to play some golf, going to play some different golf courses, relaxing, hitting some golf balls. Everybody's going to spend their summer differently. When you're with Amex, you're bound to leave any experience with a whole new story to tell. American Express. Don't live life without it. Learn more at americanexpress.com/withAmex. This episode of the Bill Simmons Podcast is brought to you by Booking.com. Picture your dream vacation. Do you envision beachside bungalows and the sweet smell of barbecue wafting along a warm, salty breeze? Or do you see an airy lake house complete with fishing gear and other summer adventure accoutrements? Or maybe listeners of this podcast are apt to dream of a spacious, industrial-style loft fit for a post-playoff celebration. And by the way, your team secured the win because it's your fantasy. After all, one thing that's not a fantasy. Whatever your vacation vibe is, it's probably an easy click away on Booking.com. With over 28 million hotels, resorts, motels, vacation rentals, and everything in between, Booking.com has pretty much every kind of place for every kind of trip, which is helpful and easy, and that's pretty cool. Download the Booking.com app and make your next vacation easier. Booking.com, booking.yeah. All right, top 64. So we're going backwards. We're going from 64 to 1 to build at least a little suspense.
I can't wait.
There are 12 groups. This is Group L. Quality starters, a little expensive is the name of this group. Going from 64 to 59. OG Anunoby, DeAndre Ayton, Jared Allen, Fred VanVleet, DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis. Anybody in that list seem like they're being shorted a little bit and not respected enough?
It feels a little disrespectful for DeAndre Ayton.
Okay, so I agree. So even 6 weeks ago, I had him.
How about 1 year ago?
Well, 6-7 weeks ago, I had him in Group J, which we'll get to in a second. So he would have been in the 40s.
J group.
I guess the thing I couldn't get past is, how can you have trade value if it doesn't seem like anybody wants you? I mean, he's sitting there for anybody to either clear out cap space for or try to sign and trade, whatever. It is now July 10th. And I haven't heard a single DeAndre Ayton story. Even like Indiana doesn't want him. Supposedly Indiana was trying to trade Sabonis for him in February. And even Indiana's like, no, we're good. So what is going on with this? That's why I put him in the 60s for now. I didn't know what else to do. It's like, I think Jared Allen probably has more trade value than him. So again, it's Anunoby, Ayton, Allen, VanVleet, DeRozan, Sabonis. I thought you would have an issue with DeRozan being at 60, but 2 years left. You know, he's been in the league for a long time now. And you could argue last year was probably his last kind of peak. And he won't be as good this year as last year.
He peaked as late as a player. Like, he's I think he was like the fourth oldest player in NBA history to have that kind of season, to have had a peak season that late. I don't know how, that was like in the middle of the season. I saw that number and he still was really good. So this is where I think people have a hard time with these lists. They'll be like, oh, this is crazy. Like, as we keep moving up in the 50s and 40s, you're going to say these guys aren't better than DeRozan. And we'd agree with you. We'd agree with you.
That's not the point of the exercise. The point is trade value and worth and contract and years of service and upside versus have you reached your upside? Are you a year past reaching your upside? 3 years? You have to factor all that in. So in a vacuum, of course, DeRozan's not the 60th best player in the league.
And you're also... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, he's been traded twice. Most recently, a year ago, for a trade that, looking back, you wouldn't have exactly called that an awesome haul that San Antonio got to help the sign and trade, right?
Yeah, sign and trades, though, usually a little bit different. And the only reason he was traded the first time with Toronto is because you had a chance at a peak Kawhi.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would, like, where Westbrook eventually, it's going to be like, wait, this guy's been on 5 teams in his second half of his prime. Like, right. What does that tell you? I don't think the same applies to DeRozan because I think there's some different circumstances there. All
right, so I'm going to bold DeRozan because if we go through this and we decide, well, wait a second, he should be higher than that. Let's rethink that. Let's bold him. We'll keep him tentatively at 60, but we'll bold him. Going to the next group. This is the upside gang, Group K. Going from 58 to 52. 58, Keegan Murray, Tyrese Halliburton, Tyrese Maxey, double Tyrese, RJ Barrett, Jaron Jackson, Franz Wagner, and Josh Giddey. So now go back to DeRozan. If the Bulls offered DeRozan for any of those guys, I'm saying that the team that has those guys would be like, no, actually, we're good. So like RJ Barrett's a great one. If the Bulls offered DeRozan to the Knicks for RJ Barrett, I think the Knicks say no faster than the Bulls would say no, right? Which is the point of this exercise. So there you go. The one I had the hardest in this, again, the list is Keegan Murray, Halliburton, Maxey, Barrett, Jaren Jackson, Franz Wagner, Josh Giddey. The one I had the hardest with was Jaron Jackson. You could have told me 10 spots earlier or 10 spots later for him. I mean, he's just had another injury. We know he's out till at least December. He's making, I think, 25, 26 million a year. And he's young. I think he's incredibly impactful when he's out there. I think I voted for him first team all defense. And you could argue, man, that guy should actually be in the high 30s or that guy should be low 40s. Or you could argue, he can't stay in the court, move him to the 60s. I don't really know the answer, so I'm putting him at 54. What are your Jaren Jackson thoughts?
He was definitely one of my notes when I was running through it, looking at the bold part of it, because, unfortunately, I think I keep sneaking ahead to some of the other stuff. But when you look at Jaren Jackson's deal, he's going to be 27, 25. They actually reversed it on the scale for this one. They started him higher at like 29. So at 26 years old, he's down to 23 million. It felt really low. It felt really low for him. Like, I know in the next group, I don't know if I can do it this way. I don't know if I'm breaking the rules.
No, when we get to the next group, we'll talk about it.
Okay. All right. So I don't want to move on. Honestly, Giddey feels low at 52 just because I love watching that guy play so much. But in a vacuum, you're like, oh, this is too low for him. But I feel like everyone I'm looking at here, I'm only looking up, where I guess maybe the only one would be, let me wait. I'm just going to keep holding out here. So keep going.
Well, Cerruti's probably furious Wagner didn't crack the top 50. I mean, I think for the Magic fans, Wagner's probably top 20. Giddey, I agree on Giddey. And I had him bolted even before you told me to bolt him, because even watching him in Summer League the last couple of games, I'm like, God, this guy, I really like this guy. You could argue, LaMelo's coming up a few spots later. You could argue Giddey versus LaMelo. Who would you rather have for the next 7 years? Who would you rather have for the next 7 years, Giddey or LaMelo?
I got to go LaMelo only because, there's a little part of me that wants to say Giddey really bad here, but I've seen LaMelo do more already.
Yeah.
And it's just,
I think that's the right answer.
Yeah.
But you had to think about it for a split second, which is why Giddey is so interesting. Okay. Group J, calling this group the Ginobili's, parentheses, playoff guys. This goes from 51 to 44. These are all guys that we know you want on your side in a playoff series. So 51, Tyler Hero, Jordan Poole, 50, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, my guy Herb Jones, Jalen Brunson, Andrew Wiggins, improbable top 50 appearance by Andrew Wiggins, and Mikal Bridges. So Hero, Poole, Bane, Smart, Jones, Brunson, Wiggins, Bridges. I'll start here. Is that too high for Herb Jones?
Yes.
Okay.
There's no way if I were a GM and I were offering you Herb Jones for Josh Giddey, you would say yes.
Okay, so you would move Herb Jones to the upside gang.
I just wouldn't have him ahead of Josh Giddey. Here's another one for you.
Okay.
Here's another one for you.
So maybe I move Herb Jones. I think you're right. I wanted to shoot high with Herb and see your reaction. But maybe I'll move him to 54 right after Franz Wagner. So it'll go 52 Giddey, 53 Wagner, 54 Herb Jones. Okay. What was your next point?
Would you say no if RJ Barrett was offered to you and you had Herb Jones?
I love Herb Jones.
I know. I could tell.
Who do I have a better chance if I'm in a playoff series with, Herb Jones or RJ Barrett? I need to win 4 straight rounds. I need an elite perimeter defensive guy who can hit threes. And you could argue that he's probably the best young version of that in the entire league. But but there's a problem. That means you already have other things in place. And the hope would be that RJ Barrett one day can be one of those things you put in. That sounds a little aggressive to say if RJ Barrett's the best player in your basketball team, but you're never arguing. You're never looking at Herb Jones saying, I could see him being like the main guy on a team or the number 2 offensive option, where RJ. So you would move him right before the Tyrese's. I'm fine with it. I fully admit I'm not rational about Herb Jones, but I really value the stuff he does, like in an irrational way.
I'm not saying it's not valuable. It's just the profile of a player. Ultimately, what becomes more valuable? Somebody like RJ, who at the best case scenario develops into somebody who you can really trust to do a bunch of different things, or Herb Jones, who like is this incredibly nice complementary player.
I get Herb Jones for 2 more years at a rookie deal is the last thing I would say with that. But you're right, RJ. If the Pelicans call the Knicks up and offer Herb Jones straight up for RJ Barrett, the Knicks probably hang up faster.
Yes.
Than fair. Okay.
I would think so.
So I'm going to move Herb to the mid-50s. Next question. Too high, too low, or just right for Marcus Smart? So now he would be, I'd have him at 47 on this list now that we moved Herb.
If you'd asked me this a year ago, I would have. First of all, I don't think he would have been in your top 64. I don't
think he would have either.
I was really impressed with the way he kind of turned things around for him. I'm serious. So I still think there's always going to be some kind of limitations. I'd be curious to see how the Brogdon thing plays out. But I think Smart, there's always going to be a few shots you don't always like, but I didn't think it was like aggressively like, what are you doing? That, I thought he kind of started to defer a little bit more to the wings, which I think was a challenge at times before. And you factor in the defense and that in-between stuff that he does. Look, if I said, look, the Celtics would probably still trade him for RJ Barrett. I keep getting back to Barrett. Maybe I'm too high on Barrett. The Jaron Jackson Smart part of this.
Well, with Smart, you got to factor the contract in too. I think he's at 16 or 17 a year now. And I think that makes him more of an asset.
Okay, but
he's been really, really, really durable too.
Would you trade him for Tyrese Maxey?
I would not.
You wouldn't?
No.
I would.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's all right. I'm still not sure I'm over De'Aaron Fox being not ranked and Keegan Murray being 58th. But I know it's a contract thing, so.
Yeah, get Keegan Murray for 4 years before I even have to really think about it.
Right, who we've never, ever seen play yet. Like, that seems to be reserved for kind of like, picks.
All right, I'll bold Keegan Murray. All right, so the Ginobili's, we moved Herb Jones out. So 50, Tyler Hero, Poole, Bain, Smart, Brunson, Wiggins, Bridges. Congrats to Brunson, by the way. What an emotional journey for him to make that list.
Okay, two more. If Oklahoma City offered you Giddey and you're running Phoenix, and they were like, we'll give you Giddey for Bridges, what would you say?
I really value Bridges. I'm not going to overreact to the fact that playoff series is weird. Watching that guy during the season, I thought he was probably the best perimeter defender of all, like those 6'5" to 6'7" guys, right?
Yeah, his defense, not only just on the perimeter, but then, you watch against Luka and you're like, he just doesn't have the body type to fight with Luka over a series. It's just not going to happen.
But is that fair to be like,
isn't fair.
He can't guard Luka? Like, who the fuck can?
No, I completely agree.
I'm not penalizing him for that.
But I do think that Bridges has a bit of a disappearing act in his game, though, too, offensively, where I wonder, like, is this kind of what it is? Because you're right, his defense isn't just the perimeter against most guys. It's like sometimes he helps at the rim and blocks the rim and stuff, and it's awesome. But there's also a decent chunk of games with Bridges where you're like, oh, he had 4 points tonight. Like, really needed him to step up, and he didn't.
It gets hard because he's also on a team with Booker and Chris Paul, right? It's not like they're going, hey, we'll stand over here. Bridges is going to run the offense for 5 minutes. So is there more in there for somebody else? He's on the perfect team, I think.
But at least, okay, but I would say like Booker and Paul are willing teammates. Like that's one of my favorite things about Booker is that, he had to get other guys involved when it was just him, and Paul doesn't care. Paul takes 0 shots.
Bridges easily could have been in the Wiggins spot for that Warriors team and probably had as much of an impact. We'll do one more group and then we'll go to a break. This group I is called the Westbrooks, parentheses, regular season guys. It's a little kind of a dig. 43 to 40. Bradley Beal, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Jaden Ivey, and DeJounte Murray. I have Jaden Ivey bolded. I am perfectly happy to move him back into the 50s. The problem is I kept thinking back to the draft, how much value everybody seemed to think he had, and people wanted to move up and multiple picks. And it's hard to think he shouldn't be in that range if he had that much value 3 weeks ago. So I don't know. You decide. You tell me.
Can you be eligible for the regular season guy tier when you've never played in a regular season game?
Well, I put him in there because we've never seen him play it. I didn't want to put him any lower. I didn't really know where to put him. He couldn't go in the playoffs and he couldn't go in this next group. So I had to throw him in there. But I can move him to the 50s. What do you think, though? Because it seems like he really does have genuine value. And some teams, some people around the league seem to think that he might be a franchise guard potentially.
Yeah, so, when I look at the group J, the Ginobili's, Hero, Poole, Bain, Smart, Jones, Brunson, Wiggins, Bridges, I don't know if any of those guys by themselves get a deal done for Jaden Ivey. So
yeah,
I don't like the title, but I have no issue with the number.
Yeah, it's more a dig to Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal, until about a day ago, I had in the 60s because of his contract, which is just ludicrous. I mean, he has a no trade clause. He makes $50 million a year. But even House, who I think is Bradley Beal's biggest critic, was like, you can't put Bradley Beal in the 60s. That's ridiculous. Bradley Beal's good. Like, he was an All-NBA guy 2 years ago. So DeJounte Murray is the weird one to me because the price that he went for almost made me wonder if he should be up higher in the 30s. But then I just kind of felt like Atlanta panicked when they made that trade and overpaid for him. Not as bad as Minnesota paid for Gobert, but they gave up a lot. And that seemed to be more situational than anything. I wonder how many teams would have given that much up for Murray. So I think 40 seems like the right spot for him. But do you think he should be higher or no?
Well, granted, we'll get to the rest of these guys, but when I started looking at Zach LaVine, I'm going, well, how much difference is there except for a much better contract for DeJounte? And maybe that's not, like, Zach's been doing it a little bit longer. Zach's probably a little bit more dynamic as a scorer, but DeJounte defends. He rebounds the hell out of the ball.
Zach's been more successful, I think, as a player on teams.
Yeah, and he has done it longer, but now you factor in his contract versus DeJounte's. I think there's a decent conversation around, like, what would you rather have?
The only thing with Murray is we know 2 years from now he's going to be one in the $35 to $40 million or whatever. And that would make me nervous considering we've never even seen. The one time we saw him in a playoff situation was that play-in game, and he was absolutely terrible, right? He was like really bad in that game. So that makes me a little nervous.
It's one game.
I get it. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to move into the top 40. All right. We are now at number 39. This next group is Group H. It's called Sorry He's Worth More to Us Than to You. It features the following 5 guys. This will probably be where the podcast gets a little polarizing for people. Number 39, Chris Paul. Number 38, Dame Lillard. Number 37, Chris Middleton. Number 36, Jamal Murray, coming off a knee injury. Number 35, LeBron James. So going through all of those, Chris Paul, I don't know how many more years he has left. I think he's worth more to Phoenix than any other team. I can't imagine Phoenix like, oh, cool, they offered us Josh Giddey for Chris Paul. Let's just do that and punt on, this window we have to try to win the title. Dame just got this extension for $120 million for 2 years on top of all the money he's already making. That's one of those where he's making so much money it doesn't make sense for anybody. Middleton we saw how important he was because I think everybody thinks if he had played last season, maybe Milwaukee wins the title. Murray, don't need to make his case. Then LeBron, this is year 20 for him and he's a free agent after the year. I don't see any scenario where he has higher trade value than this, especially for a Lakers team you could argue should be rebuilding. So the one I have bolded in this group is Dame because I don't know if he should even be higher than this. What's your take?
We've talked about Dame quite a bit. It always felt like, would he push his way out? And a lot of this stuff, you have to remind yourself, unless you have info, like it can be just completely just speculative, like, oh, he'll want to leave. And then it becomes, everybody sort of accepts it. And then it's like, everybody keeps talking about this guy wanting to leave. And then we had that Chris Haynes thing that you and I talked about. I think that was even back a year ago where he kind of thanked the fans and everything. I was told consistently throughout it, like he likes being the star attraction for this franchise. It's still geographically convenient to where he's from and how many family members he has up in the Portland area. And it's very clear that Portland's like, all right, we know we're not great, but we don't want to tear this whole thing down. The ownership thing's kind of weird with the announcements that it was going to be sold and now it's not for sale. I don't know if that's just all posturing. So they bring back Nurkic. They pay Simons. I don't know why they had to tack on the extra years for Dame, but they must have the most assurance any franchise has had in recent history from their guy that he has no interest in going anywhere else. And they have like somebody that people can come and buy tickets and watch. Like, that's what I think this is. It's a collective. Let's see what we have. Let's bring everybody back. We can show Dame that we're supportive. We're going to be supportive of him with the money. He's not going to be one of the stars that decides he's going to bail in a couple of years. Because like the Beal extension for me is very clear. Like, he wanted the 250. He got the 250. We'll see what happens now. Where
right.
Lillard, it's kind of played out based on just conversations I had with different people over the last couple of years. Like, he's not really the kind of guy that like wants to go play second act to somebody else, especially at an age where it's not like he's in his mid 30s. He just, what is he, 31 now, 32?
31. Well, can we talk about his quotes? Because I thought his press conference, it was like, I felt like cheering as I was reading my iPad, where he has quotes like, I feel proud to be that guy. Something that's missing in our league is the character and the fight and the passion and pride about not just the name on the back, but the name on the front and how you impact the people that you come in contact with. He said that. And he also said, I don't think anybody wouldn't be happy being a champion, but it wouldn't be as fulfilling for me as I would want that moment to be, meaning if he left. So, it really seemed genuine to me. I don't feel like he was just posturing. I think he wants to stay in Portland. I think you're right about he likes being the guy, which he is. And if you're looking at this really carefully and you see how people reacted to Curry and Golden State and Giannis and Milwaukee, because those guys had been there and stayed there, obviously it's meaningful to him. So I don't know. I was buying what he was selling.
Yeah, and Portland gave him 2 extra years when they didn't need to. I mean, we were wondering, like, wait, his 4-year extension's about to kick in. He doesn't play this year. He was clearly hurt. I've been told he's going to tear it up this year. They're like, look out. Like, he is going to absolutely tear it up. Like, that's the kind of guy he is. That's the kind of shape he is. That's the kind of work he's put in. So maybe they just all got together and he was like, I'm not going to be like everybody else. Because usually when I hear these quotes, it's an eye roll. You're like, all right, cool, whatever. With him, it feels more believable. And I think they just all were so on the same page. And I do wonder, too, if you look at the last couple of years of the contract, at 25, 26, he's going to be 58.5. In 26, 27, it's going to be 63.2. That'll be 36 years old.
Oh, my God. See, that's why I can't move him high. I can't move him higher than 38. I can't move him out of this group.
Is that done? As you were very early on this when the first one came through, because I remember reading it going like, wait, the cap bump because of the TV deals? And it was, you were like, I don't know how many people wrote about it. I just remember going, wait, this could change. Is that with the TV deal expiring in 24-25 where Portland goes, well, shit, they're going to triple again.
Yeah.
And $60 million for a player. Like, people are freaking out about $60+ million. Do you realize what contracts are going to look like in like another 6 or 7 years?
Yeah. With all that said, the Evan Turner, Luol Deng, Joakim Noah Summer is still incredible. But yeah, you're right. The price for a superstar, it's probably going to either be medium size or low. The question is whether he'll still be a superstar in the middle of this decade, because we just saw him miss an entire year, and he's a little guy, and little guys don't age that well.
That's your thing, and you're not wrong about it. That's why the Chris Paul thing.
All right, so we'll leave him at 38.
Yeah.
We don't need to talk about LeBron, right?
Yeah, we do. We have to give it, because when I first looked, I'm like, wait, what? LeBron's 35th? But I don't, like, when you start running through the names ahead of it, it's almost an impossible conversation. Like, what is he worth on the trade market? I mean, he's got to age at some point here pretty quickly, right?
I think he's probably 35. You could talk me into he could be in the high 20s in a group that we're 2 groups away from. So I'm going to bold LeBron, and we'll talk about him again in the 20s. Next group is called, this is, I think, your favorite group. Group G. Too young, too cheap, too good. Please stop calling us. This goes from 34 to 29. Number 34 is LaMelo Ball, Jabari Smith, Jalen Green, your guy Darius Garland. And then 30 and 29. I put Paolo 30 and Chet 29. Even just watching Chet in the summer league, I'm more excited about Chet right now. And this breaks my rule of don't take any lessons from summer league. But the shot blocking, I think, is going to be something he's going to be able to do as a pro in a way that even if I know summer league's ridiculous. I know you're going to get to see him in person, but I really like both of them. I have Chet by a hair right now. But everyone's a winner in that one. Any of those names do you like the order? I'll do it again. LaMelo, Jabari, Jalen Green, Garland, Paolo, Chet. Who would you have leading that group?
I'd have Paolo leading it.
Okay.
But, you want something funny? The first day
I think you're right. I'm going to move Chet. I think I just got excited. Go ahead.
The blocking of the shots is hysterical because I think the numbers, like 75% of the guys that you're watching in summer league games will never be on an NBA roster.
Sure.
And so a lot of those guys apparently either don't pay any attention. I don't know. There's a ton of advanced scouting with these groups, or they pay a ton of attention and are like, this stiff was the number 2 pick.
I'm going to go right at him.
Yeah, I'm going to go right at him. Guys keep going right at him with like no idea how like what they're challenging. His instincts, his placement, the way and he's enormous. His shot blocking is incredible. And yeah, it's just summer league, but it's funny because it's happening
he's got
so
the
much.
Instincts. You can see it.
I'm not saying like, oh, now in the regular, but I can see in the NBA regular season, guys are going to stop doing this, where the summer league guys just don't know any better.
It's all stuff we knew he had. The other thing is how active he is on offensive rebounds. Like he's going to the rim with his hands up over and over and over again. And you just got to keep remembering to box him out. He's really smart. Listen, we never doubted the talent. It was just a question of physically, can this guy hold up for 15 years? What's he going to look like when he's 26? Talent-wise, he's got it.
Bill, he was doing stuff. And like, it's just a great mindset that he cares this much. But you know how like the big comes down at the top of the key and the ball's like to his left or right, and he'll go into his guy and then get out of it and catch it. And then the action happens and then you can pass with Chet. Like he's running into his guy like a tight end in the end zone and pushing off and like getting separation. Then there's that, I think they call it a Spain cut, where it ends up being something where you kind of trail down the lane on the other side. And most guys, if they even know what they're doing, they don't care unless the play's for them. And he's like making these cuts as if it's like a high intensity regular season game.
Yeah.
And these are such great traits to have in a player. But back to the Paolo part of it, like, you know how it was just back and forth, and then it was Jabari and it was Chet, it was all these different things. I always had a really hard time with it. Okay. And then finally I go, I'm just going to go Paolo. The first 4 NBA family people, whether you're an agent, advanced scout, assistant coach, front office guy, whatever, the first 4 people I ran into were like, "Did you see Paolo yet?" I was like, "I watched it on TV, and then I'll see today." Like, that's why I drove straight here to see Paolo. I didn't check into the hotel because I wanted to see Paolo first. And they were like, "Yeah, it's not really close. It's Paolo." I'm like, wait. I'm like, it's definitely still, and I'm the Banchero guy, and I'm thinking like, wait, it's still a conversation. And it's just kind of funny that like how impactful Paolo was in these first few games, and as good as Chet has been, just to see how big Paolo is physically. There's something that cannot replace like actually seeing your prospect out on a floor with other NBA bodies, where you just go, my God, this guy is huge and he's so smooth. And no, to be fair, these weren't guys that were like digging into the draft. They were kind of more on the day-to-day NBA side of it. And it was just I just kind of like laughed to myself thinking, so everybody's convinced that it was always Paolo and there was never a conversation because he's been so good in the early summer league.
Chet's really good. All right. So we went LaMelo, Jabari, Jalen, Garland, Chet, Paolo. Now we're into Group F, which is called If You Tell Woj, I'll Deny It to the Death, but I'm listening.
This title. I like that title better than Group G.
There's one name in here that shouldn't be in here, but there was nowhere else to put him. Anyway, number 28 to number 23, Zach LaVine, Donovan Mitchell, who's bolded, Rudy Gobert, who I had nowhere else to put. He kind of just had to be in this group, even though he just got traded. Karl Anthony Towns, Kawhi Leonard, number 24, Zion Williamson, number 23. So number 27, Donovan Mitchell, who I have bolded. I have moved him all around the place the last couple of weeks. And I think it's the rare case of somebody's trade value actually being worth more than the actual player, because he's the last really tradable asset. I think people know Utah wants to trade him, despite what they would say publicly. I think people could talk themselves into a lot of things with him about weird situation. He needs to have the ball more, put him in a big market. It's going to blow up. And initially I had him in the 30s, like right around where LeBron was. But I moved him up because I think he is going to get traded. And I think he's going to go for a lot. And it's the same reason, like if I had done this, if we had done this podcast 2 weeks ago, I would have had Gobert in the Westbrook's regular season guys. I would have him in the 40s because of his contract. I'd be like, his contract's prohibitive. That's a lot of money for a tall guy in his 30s. Well, we know what happened. Minnesota overpaid for him in a pretty historic way. So Mitchell, I feel like, has to be in the 20s. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know what to do. I don't think there's a perfect answer because, a lot of it depends on what the other person thinks of Mitchell. Like, we could go back and forth and these are yours, but like, is it impossible to think if the Clippers got a call? Again, why would Utah trade for Kawhi Leonard? But, would they go, look, Mitchell's healthy, wants to be here. Like, maybe he's a little bit easier to work with than Kawhi.
Yeah.
I don't think that's crazy. Mitchell going back to the playoff series a couple years ago, he would have been a lot higher. This wasn't a great year for him. But then on the other front, if I look back to Group G, the really young guys, like, what if
I wouldn't trade any of those guys for Mitchell.
Yeah, so that's why Mitchell's ahead of him. But if you offered Mitchell for Paolo right now to Orlando, they're telling you no.
Yeah, I think he should go higher. I'm gonna move him into the LeBron group. I think every single guy in the
lower,
in the
you
group,
mean? Essentially,
yeah, I'm gonna move him to 34. I think, because in that Group G, LaMelo, Jabari, Jalen Green, Darius Garland, Chet Holmgren, Paolo. I just don't think their teams would trade any of those guys straight up for Donovan Mitchell. I don't.
It's not really how trades work. You can have our top pick if we ended up not liking him in 2 years.
You're right. But right now?
Right now, no.
And I think Utah, it's weird because I think Utah would look at it as like, we need Paolo and picks for Donovan Mitchell, or we're not giving him up. So this would be the case for him not getting traded. But I think the Miami thing will eventually work out somehow, would be my guess. Don't you think? Hero, Duncan Robinson, couple more contracts and picks. Maybe Lowry's in it. They take Mike Conley back and they just give them 1 million picks, would be my guess.
Even though you normally, again, you don't get the really good player back when you're trading your good player. I get to do better than Tyler Hero. And I don't know. Miami always seems to find a way with Spo and that entire front office, who's terrific, of still being competitive. Like, they're a worse bet to say, oh, I have this unprotected pick in 28. Some of these teams, I'm like, yeah, awesome.
Like Knicks. So if it's RJ Barrett and picks, I'd be like, oh, I'm getting Knicks picks. This is great.
Yeah,
this team's incompetent for decades.
If I'm getting Heat picks, I'm not as excited about it because I just think the world of those guys and what they pull off. And then I'm like, wait, I gotta take on Duncan Robinson's extension too. Like, wait, who did you call for? Did you call for Bogdanovich or Mitchell?
Right. No, it's a fair point. Well, we'll put him at 34. So Group F is now Zach LaVine, Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, Kawhi Leonard at number 23, Zion Williamson. Now, what'll be interesting about doing this list a year from now is you could tell me Zion's he's like number 8 next year. Or number 5.
He might have been top 10 for me after point Zion season.
Yeah. Oh, if we did this a year ago, I think there's no question he's in the top 10 last year. So this year it's 23 and it could go one way or the other. I don't think he'll be 23 again. He'll either be like 13 or he'll be like 48.
And just an aside on the contract, if he gets the 5 years, it could be 193, it could be 231, right? So it could end up being everything that he would have gotten if everything were normal. That he signed it proves shit. Can we all just agree on that? Like, if I had been Zion this whole time, I'd be going, of course I just want this extension. Like, I'll figure it out later. And everybody said the right thing, and maybe he loves it, and that's where he wants to be. And everybody's saying all the perfect things. But think how, like for another organization, it might have been like, we don't know that we even want to do the 4 or the 5 years for 193 because we're just not sure. So now he's got it on paper. He's good. He knows he's going to make that money. These guys have insurance on the deals on top of every other thing. So I don't know that it proves anything other than it locks in what he's going to make, Bill, and we'll now see. I hope it all works out. I hope he stays there. I hope he's healthy. I hope the Pelicans are awesome. But if anybody looks at that announcement and the news of the signings like, oh, I thought he wanted to leave, like the sarcastic, like, oh, I thought Zion wanted to go somewhere else. Well, no, what he wanted first and foremost is what happened this week, and now we'll see.
Who do you think is more likely to get traded between him and Ingram? If you just had to say the next 4 years, one of those two guys will be traded, which would be your bet? We're not reporting anything. We're not saying anything, but just 4 years from now, who is less likely to be on that team?
If Zion's healthy, Ingram's the one that would be traded just because Zion has the star quality, the hype part around it. You know, the kind of thing that gets your fan base more excited than Ingram, despite the fact Ingram just finished up another year. Like if I'm Ingram, I'm like, man, you know, like I was really good this year. And now it's like when people go, hey, are they going to do point Zion? It was fun. It worked. They better not do it. Like that's not going to work. That's that heliocentric shit I never really like, even if it was fun to watch. And I'm telling you, Ingram didn't like it. I watched enough of those games to be like, oh, cool. ISO, 5 out, Zion, while I stand here as a corner outlet like some 37-year-old guy. So I think Willie Green's terrific and they'll get everybody involved. But point Zion, I think, would be like an emergency break glass situation, not the foundation of their offense.
The most fun KD trade, now that we've had to think about this for 3 weeks, is clearly Ingram and picks for KD. Ingram and 1 million picks. It's just the most fun trade because KD would still have a chance to succeed in a real way with a good team. And the Nets would be able to reboot in a decent way and kind of extricate themselves from this and get those picks back so they're not kind of screwed with the picks they're giving to the Rockets. Anyway. All right. Now we're into the top 22. Brandon Ingram, coincidentally, is in this next group. This is Group E. We have 5 groups to go. 5 people. The group is called Let Me Save You Some Time, N-O. Number 22, Brandon Ingram. Number 21, Pascal Siakam, who I have bolded. Number 20, Drew Holiday. Number 19, Jaylen Brown. Number 18, Bam Adebayo. I also have Drew Holiday bolded. I'm just going to say, I'm happy to be accused of overrating Drew Holiday. I completely, utterly, 100% value, respect, and adore what he does. And I think if my goal is to win the title, he has to be in the top 20 for me. I think his contract's fine. We already saw him get traded for a shitload. And that is a guy I know I can win the title with if he's on my team with a great player. So I have him 20, but I also have him bolded because you could argue he should be in the next group. Siakam, I think I value a little more than most. I thought the last 4 months, I thought he was awesome. Contract solid. But like would the Pelicans trade Zion Williamson for Pascal Siakam? No. I'm not sure Toronto would do it either. So I don't know where to put those guys. So what is your take on that? Ingram, Siakam, Holiday, Jaylen Brown, Adebayo.
It gets really tough here because I probably look at some of the group that's coming up next and I like Bam, maybe a couple better than a couple of those guys. But then you're wondering, all right, am I overrating? Like when you start thinking about this group, like can this guy be number 1 or number 2 on a really good playoff team? You don't have to say like, oh, he has to win a title because that list becomes even smaller. Yeah. And even with Bam, I love him, but I still felt like there were a few games in that Celtics series where I was like, I need a little bit more out of you. And
I'm so glad you said that. That was the reason I didn't want to put him in the Group D. Because there were games where Miami was basically like, we need more from Bam. Where is he? We had to get him more involved. And it was just like, they lost the series. And I actually think if he had played better, I think they could have won the series. So
I still was driving around yesterday. I was still thinking about that Jimmy Butler 3. I was like, how weird, how different would things feel right now? And I mean, you know, it's the same thing as the Durant shot against Milwaukee the year before, like how different everything would have felt. But yeah, with Bam, you know, now we're starting to talk about guys being like, you got to be number 1 or number 2 on a really good basketball team. And I'm even wondering, like, does Siakam check that box more? Does Ingram check it more? But then I'm like, no, Bam's defense is versatility. Maybe it was a bad matchup because, we're going to sit here and rave about Boston's defense and multiple bigs they can throw at you. Maybe it was the worst possible situation for Bam and all that other stuff. But I don't know if he's ever going to be like the second guy, even though I like him and all that stuff. And I might even like Ingram more than Siakam. But again, now I'm just like out loud stream of consciousness, only because the Ingram relationship thing seems to be fine. The Siakam's had a couple moments where he's worried me a bit.
Yeah, I want to move Siakam back. Yeah, poor Siakam. He didn't even do anything.
You moved him back like one. So
no, I
wait, Zion.
I want to move him to Group F because I also don't think the Clippers would trade Kawhi for Siakam in a million years. But I think Toronto would. I think there's a longer phone call for Toronto in that situation. Toronto's like, Jesus, the Clippers are offering us Kawhi for Siakam. We got to have a meeting.
What about Towns' pre-contract extension?
Yeah, I think he should be. I was thinking maybe Siakam right before Levine. So I'd put him number 27.
But you voted him all NBA, correct?
I did, but what you said is the catch with that. Of he's had 2 moments now in the last couple of years where it just seemed like things were going wrong and he was very available, right? It's just twice in the last 2 years. So I think we have to factor that in. So I'll make Group F, 28 Zach LaVine, Siakam 27, Gobert, Towns, Kawhi, Zion. And then Group E is just Ingram, Holiday, Jaylen Brown, and Bam. I think that's right. Because I think Ingram, for what he showed us in the playoffs and how his arrow is pointed up, I think he's more valuable than Siakam to me. You agree?
I like him a little bit better, although, again, Siakam's run to close the season, and he played in
awesome
bigger playoff games. But, you could argue that the biggest playoff games he was playing, it was a little easier for him because he had Kawhi around.
Should we have spent more time talking about Kawhi or no? Because I have him now. He would be 18, 19, 20, 21.
I'm not really much of a Kawhi guy. I'm kind of sick of hearing about, like, nobody knows what he's doing. He does his own thing. I don't know that I would want to trade for that guy and give him the keys and be like, oh, he's hurt a lot and then never tells us if he's healthy. And then I got to keep extending him. And I actually gave up all these picks to bring in Paul George because getting Paul George is the way to cement me getting Kawhi. I don't know. I guess I'm a little difficult that way, that if I owned a basketball team or if I ran a basketball team, the guy I was paying $40 million, I'd like a few more heads up on whether or not he's going to come back and play. I don't know. I get fucking crazy over
here. A little more communication. We gave up 75 first-round picks and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Gallinari for you. Can you just tell us if you're going to show up today? All right, so we'll move Siakam. So it's Zach LaVine, Siakam, Gobert, Towns, Kawhi, Zion. And then Group B is Ingram, Holiday, Brown, Bam. And now we're going to the top 17. This is Group D. What a beautiful group this is.
This thing. I just want a T-shirt with this
Kyle
group
wants
on
a break. Let's take a break. All right, we're hitting the home stretch here. 17 to go. Group D. It's called True Franchise Guys. First of all, kudos to you. Your guy, Scotty Barnes, made it number 17. You were driving the bandwagon. You bought a lot of real estate on Scotty Barnes Island coming out of college. You were all in. You were vindicated. Toronto even called him a true franchise guy. In one of their press conferences. I'm all in too. I love Scotty Barnes. I have him 17. Cade Cunningham 16, who I bolded. Jimmy Butler 15. Paul George 14. Trae Young 13. Anthony Davis 12. And Devin Booker 11. And one of the things with Booker is something Eddie Johnson said when I was on the show with him and Termini, a show that I love. You listen to on SiriusXM, the NBA station. He's like, Booker's the guy in Phoenix, and that matters. Like, it matters. We just saw it with Dame Lillard. It matters when you become the guy. And they don't even need to tell Devin Booker, hey, we might trade you for KD, or don't listen to those rumors or whatever, because he knows he's not getting traded. He's the guy in Phoenix. That's how it's going to play out. He's not leaving Phoenix. So I think he has the most trade value. He's also had a lot of success. Came very close to winning the title. He's a proven guy. We saw him with Chris Paul out of the lineup, still be able to, at least during the regular season, keep that team going. Davis, it gets a little dicey, and I didn't really know what to do with him. I have him bolded as well. So I had Cade and Davis bolded in this group. Scotty Barnes, Cunningham, Butler, George, Young, Davis, and number 11, Booker. Want to talk about Davis first?
No, I don't, because I feel like do all the other stuff first, because Davis is really hard to figure out here. I'm surprised you had him this high. I have no issue with it. I think most people would have an issue with it because it's too many injuries. I'm surprised. I thought you would kind of turn the page on him, so I didn't think he would be this high for you.
I thought about the bubble in the playoffs and how important he was for a lot of that time. And he had a chance. I think if he had a killer closeout in Game 6, I think he was going to win Finals MVP. And I think there was a real argument now about the torch has been passed from Duncan to him. But over and over again in his career, every time there's been a moment like that, it hasn't happened for him. I just think it's still year 11 for him. We have a lot of time to go, right? Durant's year 16. LeBron's year 20. Like, I feel like the journey, I'm not ready to write him off as a top 12 guy yet. And I do think if they dangled him, he would have an incredible amount of value. There's just not a lot of people like him. And you can make excuses for a lot of miles in the bubble. He put on too much weight last season. Now he learned his lesson. I want to see him this year before I decide about what his ceiling is as a superstar.
I like it. I do. I like it. I have a hard time believing, like, when I think about the way he's talked about, people saying, oh, what would you even get for him? It's like, well, if you have to start asking yourself, like, how well would we do? Then that means you keep him, you know? Like, that means you keep him. And it's always really hard. Like, we don't have the Alex English, Mark Aguirre trades anymore.
Right.
We don't have those. Like, that would be awesome. That was weird.
Kid Marbury was another classic.
Kid Marbury's another good one.
No picks, nothing. Just point guard for point guard.
That would be a good pod. Like the actual good player for good player trades that used
doesn't
to
happen anymore.
That's right.
It's too hard.
You can't trade Davis when LeBron's still there, and and all the other shit they're dealing with. So whenever I like, this is the way I ask this. You can, and I'm talking to like anyone listening, going, Anthony Davis, whatever. And I get it. He's hurt. It's super frustrating. And on top of that, he stopped making shots. You're like, wait, are you going to be a big guy now that lost your jumper? Because now that changes who you are big time. I can't ever convince myself that there isn't some great second act coming for him.
Me too. And whether he gets there or not, I don't know. But I know that Jimmy Butler, who's 15th on this list, who has proven himself to be one of the better big game guys of this generation. And if the Lakers called Miami up and said, we'll give you Anthony Davis for Jimmy Butler, Miami's either doing it or they're having a 7-hour meeting before they decide not to do it. But I just think they would do it. If they could turn Jimmy Butler and Anthony Davis, I think they do it. You're thinking about it.
No, I am thinking about it. Because you could say with Miami, it might be a little different, because they'd be saying, like, we need.
It's a little different for about 2 seconds until they think about, wow, we could have Bam and Anthony Davis together. We're doing this.
Like, what did Minnesota do? Let's do that.
Can we go backwards to 17 Scotty Barnes versus 16 Cade Cunningham?
Yeah.
This was another Paolo Chet thing for me. I flipped it back and forth a bunch of times. I'm perfectly happy to flip it again. I guess it depends what you want from your young franchise guard. Do you want all the stuff Scotty does, or do you want all the stuff Cade does? And who gives you a better chance if he was your guy on a team that's trying to win the title 4 years from now? Just in your head, what would you rather want?
I lean towards Cade as much as I love Scotty.
I did too.
It feels like the way Cade plays basketball, like, if that's what I'm getting and that's the way he figures out. And the scary thing with this is Barnes. I think out of necessity, we started to see some glimpses of him running the offense. And you were like, man. So I can't even completely rule it out, Scotty Barnes.
Yeah.
But that was probably more because of injury. But, the best version of Cade is almost what every team would hope to. The way the game is played now, high pick and roll, can shoot, is still okay off, a willing teammate, all those things. So him at his highest profile is why I would agree with you in having him ahead of Scotty Barnes.
And then Butler 15, Paul George 14. You can make a case Paul George could go into Group B because of the injury history.
Totally. Yeah.
But I really value some of the stuff he was doing in the playoffs 2 years ago.
That's nice to say, right? After all those playoff years, that was kind of a nice thing to say. Yeah.
I really valued how he ran that team. And I do think if Kawhi, even when Kawhi got hurt, they still were able to get to the next round. I don't know. I just think him versus Butler, it's pretty even in my mind. But you could say with the injury, with the fact that, he had the awful broken leg. Now he's had some major shoulder stuff that, you call it the Blake Griffin zone. Where it's like, how many serious injuries can you have before you change physically? And I wonder if he's getting there.
Yeah, this is where the Cade part, you go like, how high could I actually put this guy doing it 1 year, losing a bunch of games to Detroit with not a great team around him, right?
Yeah. Whereas Paul George, we've seen him carry really good teams.
I feel a little better about the Jimmy Butler resume than the Paul resume that had
So I'll flip those then. I think you're right. Yeah, because just seeing Paul George that high makes me nervous because just thinking about an MRI of his body, be like, whoa, what's that? Why isn't that a clean shoulder? What's going on with the shoulder? Why does it zag there for a second? I'll put him 15. Okay, so we'll go 17 Barnes, 16 Cade, 15 Paul George, 14 Jimmy Butler, who's probably mad he's not higher, Trae Young, Anthony Davis, Devin Booker. The Trae thing is a little complicated because I think he's worth so much more to Atlanta than any other team. I mean, they're all in, right? There's really no scenario where they even take phone calls about him. But if we're just doing a who should have the highest trade value, I'm not sure I would have him in the top 13. But I do think, he took him to conference finals. We've seen him succeed in the playoffs regardless of the circumstances. And I think that it's around that range.
This one's really interesting because, now you bring in DeJounte. Would you say no if Miami offered you Bam for Trae?
I think Atlanta would say no faster because I think they value the Trae piece in the city. And the fact that he's the first cool Hawk since Dominique. I think that matters.
Well, Herter, but yeah. And Herter, I should have said.
I'm just reconciling the fact that the Celtics didn't get Herter in the trade exception. I wanted it so bad.
Well, because you needed to give him something. You can't. That was an asset move.
Yeah, but we could have given him basically all the stuff they gave for Brogdon easily could have gone in a Herter trade.
I would trade Trae for Cade. I'd have no problem.
You would if you were Atlanta,
right? Doesn't mean I'd put Cade 12th. After one rookie year. Again, this isn't like LeBron's rookie year. I don't know. Where'd you have LeBron after his rookie year? Was he number one on your trade value chart?
Oh, I think he was no, because Shaq was still in the league at that. Or no, was Shaq? No, Kobe was in the league. T-Mac was in the league. LeBron was definitely 4 or 5 that first year.
Yeah, I'm just talking out loud here. So it feels like Trae, I don't have a problem with where he is, but I would
wait a second. You raised an interesting point because I think we agree on this. I'd rather have Cade Cunningham than Trae Young.
Yeah. Contracts would be the same. If somebody said to me tomorrow, hey, we have this thing, you're running the new expansion team, and the first 2 guys, this is an absurd scenario because it's all fake. But you could have Cade or Trae. I go, oh yeah, give me Cade.
Well, also Cade at $7 million versus Trae now on a max deal.
But have them both be $30 million.
So we should move Trae down then. I think we didn't want to admit it, but I think we have to admit it. All right, I'm moving him to 17. I'm moving him behind Barnes and Cade. Would Toronto trade Barnes straight up for Trae?
No, because this is where the part of Trae's game where if you're Toronto and you're Nick Nurse and you go, well, do you want to do what we do? Do you want to play?
Yeah.
I think the DeJounte trade was part of trying to get Trae a little more broken in, to be honest with you. Hey man, we know you're awesome. We know you can do all these things. We know you can score 1 million points, but all right, that's it.
All right. So we'll put Barnes and Cunningham above him because of rookie salaries. That's it. You just, fundamentally, it's easier to build a team around those 2 guys making $6-7 million a year versus Trae making, in the high 30s. 17 Trae, 16 Scotty, 15 Cade, 14 Paul George, 13 Jimmy Butler, 12 Davis, 11 Devin Booker. Next group, is a one-man group. It's called Group C. We're not trading him, parentheses, but make us an offer. And it's Kevin Durant. And he's number 10. And this is why the trade value list is so much fun, because we have real life examples, right? We know that if they call Minnesota for Anthony Edwards, Minnesota is saying no thanks. And we'll go through the Untouchables. But Durant at number 10, I got to be honest, in the spring, before he asked for a trade request, I had him at number 10. So the trade request did not change his ranking at all.
It feels like it should, but I get what you're doing here.
It's his 16th year. He's had a foot injury. He had torn Achilles. I think he's had 2 feet injuries. He's had a lot of miles on him. He's played a lot of playoff games. And he's 7 feet tall, and who knows? So I think he's still one of the 5 best players in the league, but I think number 10 is the right spot for him. So now, next group is the Untouchables. This is Group B. From 9 to 5, Anthony Edwards, Evan Mobley, who I've bolded, Jason Tatum, Joel Embiid, and Ja Morant. There's some great arguments in this one. Am I too high on Evan Mobley is my first question. I'm 8th.
I'll just give you my answer now. I would trade everybody except for Embiid for Anthony Edwards in this group.
Wow.
Including Ja.
Oh!
I don't give a shit.
Even Evan Mobley?
Yeah.
Really?
The best version of Anthony Edwards is what you want on your basketball team. So as much as I love Mobley, we all love Mobley. We love him. The guy doesn't make any mistakes. He's awesome. Which NBA team in this era is are they running stuff through him? Like, I need somebody with the ball who can go figure it out and do it for me. And that's what the game is. And with Edwards' size,
he's not even 21 years old yet.
And his personality.
His personality is incredible. He might have the highest approval. Him and Ja might have the highest approval ratings of anyone other than Steph.
Oh, I think his is ahead of Ja's, because I think Ja, after the Warriors series, when we started doing a little code breaking, people were kind of like, what's going on with Ja? And again, Ja's one of my favorite. I think he's one of my favorite players to watch. I think it's so authentic. I think he represents the city. It's awesome. I still think of that game. Was it game 2 where he had 47 against Golden State? Like that's great. Like Anthony Edwards has never done anything like that. However, body type, projection here. Yeah. I always worried about how Ja lands like 5 or 6 times a game.
I really worry about the injury piece with Ja too. The reason I put him 5 is just what he means to Memphis and just how fucking popular he is. I mean, he's the most, according to the NBA, like all their digital media, their social, everything, like Ja's the most popular young player. I think that has to matter.
Well, if you
also,
factor that
real
in,
success with them, the whole thing.
Honestly, you should put Ja in the top tier then, because if that's what we're talking about, importance to city, then it's hard to argue. Right.
This is part of trade value. So, all right, I'll flip Mobley and Edwards because you sold me on that.
Tatum. And they offer Edwards for Tatum, and you say what?
I plead the 5th. I'm not giving my answer.
I would do it because I think
Jason Tatum.
I think Tatum has "I'm fucking out of here" written all over him one day.
Come on.
Yeah, I just a guess. I don't know.
I do love Anthony Edwards. Well, the real question for me is Embiid. So I have Embiid 6. Big center, injury history. Little older now. He's been in the league. He was in the 2014 draft. Huge contract. Because I was trying to figure out, should he be 9 or should he be 6? He's also a guy who means an incredible amount to the city too. See if that factor. But so right now it's Mobley, Edwards, Tatum, Embiid, Morant. Should Embiid be 9 instead of 6?
Player, he should be 5. player, he should be in the next group if you want to hit me with the injury history stuff. But I still think the injury story for Embiid has gone so much better than I thought it was going to go.
I'm with you.
Than when it started. And I would put, what I like about this group is personality-wise, love Edwards. We don't know Mobley enough at this point. I think, Tatum, for the most part, I think seems to get it. I love Embiid's personality. I love Ja's personality for the most part. But Embiid, that's weird. Like, if we're playing the game of, if you offered Anthony Edwards for Embiid, Philly is saying no. You're right. Would you say no to Mobley? Yeah, you would probably. But offensively, Embiid from a very early age is showing more offensively than Mobley does at this point.
I'm higher on Mobley's offense than you. I actually thought I saw him initiate stuff. I like the fact that he wasn't afraid to shoot threes. I think he's a fantastic passer. And I think he really gives a shit. I don't want to say
anything. I don't want to say anything negative about him. I don't think.
Yeah, we're in hollow ground. The thing about this is like we're now in the top 9 players for assets, and being the 9th player on this list is nothing to be ashamed of.
After 1 year in the NBA, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you trade, if you're Cleveland, would you trade Evan Mobley for Kevin Durant? Straight up.
Which Durant am I getting? Am I getting...
You're getting Durant right now.
I think I'd say no.
Yeah, you'd say no because Kevin
Durant's I know he's gonna want to trade in a year.
Yeah, he's going to be not super happy the moment he gets there, and I think that factors in too. And that's the thing. That's been the big caveat of this trade list is like, you also have to factor in how many cities would this guy be happy in. If I'm getting Evan Mobley, he's like, I don't care where I'm playing. I'm so happy to be in the NBA. Great. Durant's got like probably 4 cities he'd actually want to go to, right?
Yeah, probably.
That matters for trade value.
How many of the 4 does he want to stay in for 4 more years? You know what you should do when it gets a little bit more boring this summer? You should do NBA happiness rankings. Just who do you think is the happiest, the least happiest? Go 60 deep. You'd be like, all right, so I have Sam Hauser 3rd.
Just got an extension.
I hear good things.
All right, last group. Group A. Group B was the Untouchables. Group A is completely and utterly untouchable. These teams don't even get calls. Number 4, Steph Curry. Number 3, Nikola Jokic. Number 2, Luka Doncic. Number 1, Giannis, who I think has been number 1 for a few years in a row now. And I think that's the right order too. If Steph was younger, you might move him to 1. Steph's 34. This is all degrees. None of this makes sense. None of these guys are ever getting traded. Jokic just signed this massive contract extension. Doncic is younger than all of them. And Giannis is a guaranteed finals trip if you can keep his supporting cast around him or close. And he's in his prime, and I think he has to be number 1. Do you agree with that Final Four?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's a credit for Steph being in the group when he's 34 years old. Jokic 27, Doncic 23, Giannis 27. I think Giannis is the only guy you would trade Luka for. Right? I mean, we could get into some weird thing where it'd be like, well, wait, wouldn't Golden State actually say no for Jokic for Curry? And then I started playing with
all of them are saying no.
Right. This morning I went like, what would you do? What would happen if it was like 4 non-playable characters around Steph versus the same people with Jokic? Like, which team does better?
We saw it last year with Steph. He didn't make the playoffs. It was basically him and Draymond, remember?
Yeah.
And Wiggins before he became Wiggins yet. And a lot of Toscano Anderson and some Oubre, and they couldn't even get out of the plan. I think this is the right list. If Curry was younger, he'd be higher. But I think it's the right order. All right, so the big ones, we moved Siakam back. We moved Trae Young back a little bit. We flipped Chet and Paolo, moved Mitchell back a group, moved Herb Jones back. And then you had a question about Keegan Murray. Would you bump Keegan Murray and put in somebody from honorable mention in there? Which could be De'Aaron Fox, it could be Draymond Green, it could be Kuminga, it could be Dillon Brooks, it could be Simons.
I'm going back here.
You seem pretty unenthused about Keegan Murray.
I just think it's a lot to have him ahead of, he's the 58th most valuable player when we haven't seen him play. Like, is there a version of this where Keegan Murray's a bust?
So maybe I just do a top 63. Do you even want to move anyone in? Is anyone from honorable mention bugging you? I'll read honorable mention.
Draymond? No, I have it. I have it in front of me. Oh, go ahead. Read it for the audience. You're right.
Kuzma, McDaniels, Caruso, Vucevic, Trent, Collins, McCollum, Mathurin, Fox, Carter, Rob Williams, Seth Curry, Simons, Brooks, Lou Dort, Draymond, Kuminga, Keegan Murray. You know what? Let's put Draymond in there.
Yeah.
I know he's in a contract year. I know he's a little older, but he's had a great career. And I think we could put him what? Like right before Jared Allen? Or no, I'll just put him 60. No. I'll put him 64. Yeah, he'll be the last guy. Okay. All right. So here's our final list.
Wait, well, real quick though, you would say no. Well, I guess the Knicks could have done it instead, but it felt like you would rather have Jalen Brunson than DeAndre Ayton.
I think I would rather have Jalen Brunson for 25 than Ayton for 33 or whatever. I think I would.
Okay. I don't think it's crazy. I'm just, I think Ayton, I think a lot of this is, this is what you would try to do as a GM. Be like, who is everybody down on right now because of a bad playoff series?
Oh, you and I would both have traded for Ayton already.
Yeah, the Pacers thing cooling is interesting because it felt like, eventually they were going to go ahead and make a move here. It's going to be really weird if he's just back on Phoenix after all this time, huh?
You sure you don't want to move Giddey up into the low 40s before we lock this list in?
Well,
I'll leave him there. Okay, final list.
You would say no, just to double check here. If Giddey Desmond Bane, I really like him at 49. He deserves that. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Here's the list. Group L, quality starters. Draymond, Anunoby, Ayton, Jared Allen, Van Vliet, DeRozan, Sabonis. Group K, the upside gang, 57 to 51. Halliburton, Maxey, Jones, Jaron Jackson, RJ Barrett, Franz Wagner, Josh Giddey. Now we're in the top 50. Group J, the Ginobili's, Hero, Poole, Bain, Smart, Brunson, Wiggins, Bridges. Group I, the Westbrooks, regular season guys. Beal, Gilgeous-Alexander, Jaden Ivey, DeJounte. Group H, sorry, he's worth more to us than you. Chris Paul, Dame, Middleton, Jamal Murray, number 35, LeBron James, number 34, Donovan Mitchell. Group G, too young, too cheap, too good, stop calling us. LaMelo, Jabari, Jalen Green, Garland, Chet, Paolo at 28. Group F, if you tell Woj, I'll deny it to death, but I'm listening. Levine, Siakam, Gobert, Towns, Kawhi, Zion at 22. Group E, let me save you some time. N.O., Ingram, Holiday, Brown, Bam Adebayo at 18. True franchise guys. Number 17, Trae Young, Scotty Barnes, Cade Cunningham, Paul George, Butler, Davis. Number 11, Devin Booker. Group C, we're not trading him, but make us an offer. Number 10, Kevin Durant. The Untouchables, Group B, number 9, Evan Mobley, 8, Edwards, 7, Tatum, 6, Embiid, 5, Ja Morant. And then Group A, completely, utterly untouchable. Curry, Jokic, Doncic, Giannis. It's our final group. That's a nice list. I can't believe we have this many good players. I can't believe it.
I've been working on this open. I called Cerruti this weekend and I go, I don't want to be prisoner of the moment. I try to push back against all that stuff, but I started looking at the bad teams and how much I can't wait to watch the supposed bad teams play this year. And that doesn't happen very often. So I'm actually going to go back and look. We're going to do this for an open, but I want to go back and look at like the last young groups that we were excited about. And then usually a lot of times it ends up being super disappointing, which is always a nice little reminder. But I can't believe how many, like every time Houston's on in Summer League, I'm like, I want to check that out. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I think it's just a depth thing. I think you're right. And I think that's why the expansion thing that you talked about a long time ago is making sense because it just feels like there's a lot of talent. And I don't think that is just in the moment, man.
This is my 06 trade value. Number 40 was a tie between Tayshaun Prince and Caron Butler. 39 was Chris Kaman.
Contract.
38. I wrote for Chris Kaman. Name me 3 other quality centers under 30. Go ahead. I dare you.
I loved music. I think you once described Chris Kaman once. You were like, does it look like in his spare time he stands at the head of your bed in the middle of the night just waiting for you to wake up to scare you?
I said in this, he looks like the axe murderer from an Eli Roth murder movie. 38 was Boris Diaw. 37 was Okafor. 36 was Andrew Bogut. These are guys in the 30s. The 30s this year, 35 this year was LeBron James. In 2006, it was Josh Smith. Ron Artest was number 34.
I think. 2 Fs.
Josh, number 34 was Ron Artest coming off the melee was number 34. So anyway, that's to my point that the league is super deep. Do you want to do some Vegas stuff before we go?
We'll do
the drive.
We'll do a little.
And then you got to go to a game.
Yeah. Well, I'll make it quicker, which I'm not always great with, but it was just weird to have a little bit of downtime, and I just didn't know what to do. And then I was kind of annoyed that I didn't have anything to do, so I was like, well, instead of going to Vegas, because I knew I only want to come here for a few days, and then, like everybody that comes to Vegas, a couple days, then you pretty much got it, and you're ready to go home. And I was sitting around, and I went to drive to Palm Springs on Friday. I was like, I've never been to Palm Springs. I'm going to drive there first, and then I'll stay there maybe a night or two, and then I'll go the long way to Vegas through the Mojave reservation thing because I just wanted to see what it was like. Have you done that drive?
Yeah, I've done every version of the Vegas drive. I've enjoyed all of them.
All right, cool. So I end up on the phone with somebody, and it goes on forever. And then I get on the highway after I get off this phone call, plug back in the GPS deal, and there's an extra hour added to the trip. I was on the 405 and I got on at like El Segundo, and then I took the Rosecrans exit being like, fuck that, and went back home. Like the car was packed up. And as soon as I plugged in the GPS after I got off this phone call, I was like, oh, I missed my window. I'm like, I'm not going. And that's just how I operate.
The Vegas ways will do that. There'll be one accident or something will shift, and all of a sudden 75 minutes has been added to the trip.
Yeah. And once you kind of figure out like, oh, no, I could do 2:15 right now. That's cool. I'll get there at a decent time. I went, nope, I'm out. I'm like, it's 3-something hours. And so then I sat around, and then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go at night, little night drive. So I drove into Palm Springs, got there at night, and stayed at this, nice little spot. And then I asked the guy, I was like, what are you guys closed? He's like, it's the slowest couple of weeks of the entire year. And he goes, there's nothing going on.
Yeah, it's too hot. Nobody wants to go there.
I think it was 111 degrees by 10 a.m. Yeah. So I'm sitting reading my Teddy Roosevelt book, which I'm finally got to River Dow. I don't know why it took me so long. And I was like, this is insanely hot. I was like, I'm out. So the lady was like, do you want to renew? I go, no, I think I'm leaving. So I go, I'm going through the Mojave, and it's unbelievable. Some of those towns, Needles, I forget what other town. I took a couple pictures. I sent them to my dad because he had done the drive too. And
there's a point in that drive where you figure like if your car breaks down, that's it. Nobody's ever going to see you again. There's a couple moments and the different parts of whatever Vegas drive you're taking where you do wonder like, would anyone even know?
Yeah, I ended up with the post office there, Amboy. I don't know if that's what it's called, Amboy, California. I was just, out there. I think we got a 92304 zip code for anybody who wants to research it. But it looks like where you would film something in space. Or I started thinking about that Clint Eastwood. I think it's Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where Tuco makes him just walk from behind the entire time through the desert, and he's just watching Eastwood's face blister. I don't know. Tuco, I think, is actually Breaking Bad. Anyway, whatever. I forget that guy's name. One of my favorite movies. But you're going through it. I kept getting out. It was up to 117. So I get out. I'd be like, what does 117 feel like? And at least it's dry. I'll give it that. Because those humid New England, Connecticut summers, sometimes like people don't realize like tobacco grows in this stretch of Connecticut because it's so disgusting.
Yeah.
How hot and humid it can get. So anyway, get to Vegas, go right to the gym. But yeah, it was like 117 at night here in certain spots. It was hot. And then the gym here at the hotel is hilarious because it's literally every single front office guy.
Wow, you got to get some tidbits.
I was pretty locked in, Bill. And when you see
it's a legs day.
When you see Sam Presti, doing lunges, that's not the time.
Fair. There's parts of that Vegas drive where you're in the first 10 minutes of a horror movie that's like on Cinemax. Where it's like, this is how 50 horror movies have started with the drive I'm on right now. It's like, wait, what's going on? Pull over here, it'll be fine. And
why are you getting out of the car? And I was doing that. I pulled over like 3 different times.
That guy in the porch makes me nervous. No, he's going to be able to tell us how to get to town.
There were a few more towns, though, than I would have even thought for stretches.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's a couple stretches that you're right. It's deep in it. And then I was talking to somebody, and she was like, well, what happens if you break down? I was like, well, you just die. Like, that's just accept it. I'm not. What?
It's part of the excitement.
Part of the plan. And then I stopped at this one rest area, insert whatever joke you want there, and I got back in the car, and because it recycled it, there was no service, and now I was just flying blind. And I was like, all right, well, this road makes sense, and I feel like I'm going northeast.
Yeah.
So, get the old sundials out. But
there's some stretches without cell service or gas for like 35 miles.
I think there's one that's 57 miles without any gas.
Yeah, and you'd like better be prepared.
That was the first thing I did. It was the most adult thing I've done in months. I was like, hey, right before you leave Palm Springs, why don't we top her off? Her off? And I don't know. There's not that much excitement to it. It's just, it was a really cool experience because I've never done that drive. I've done, there's the other one you can go from Vegas straight to LA where you start hitting some of that Eastern California stuff. But that drive up into Nevada before you get to Baker and all that stuff, it's crazy. It's just really, really cool territory. Right. I don't know how you live there though. I got to ask that one.
Takes a special breed. Like, you really have to like the heat. I'm not a heat guy. I would much rather be super cold than super hot.
You don't have to worry about that.
There was some Boston summers, I remember, especially in the 90s. As you said, like 100 in Boston is like 140 in Vegas. Where it's just the humidity. It's just you can't really do anything. You're just completely suffocating. And then in the city, it feels like it's hotter anyway. Okay, so you're going to go to some of these games, and then we can listen to your podcast this week, and I'm sure you're going to empty the notebook. Thanks for helping me with this list. I think we might run the list on the Ringer just because after like 12 hours, because just in case somebody tries to put some aggregated version of the list, I would just rather it went to the Ringer. So might break the rule on that. This podcast was produced by Kyle Creighton. Thanks to Steve Cerruti and Dylan Berkey as well. And if you see Russillo, make sure you hug him. He loves hugs. He loves when you touch his head. And he loves posing for pictures. Those are the 3 things I would recommend with Russillo. Good to see you, Russillo. Thanks for another great Sunday run for us.
Oh, that's it. It's over.
That's it. Yeah, we'll see you in the football season. But it's not. We'll both still be alive, and you still have your pod. And anyway, we had a nice little run. A lot to talk about this year. Unexpected Celtics run. A couple trades. The Gobert trade is still the most stunning trade I think that's happened, other than Kawhi, Paul George, that whole thing. I think
the Westbrook trade didn't work out, which was surprising. Some content there.
Yeah, who knew? Good to see you. Thanks for everything.
Thanks.
This episode of the Bill Simmons Podcast is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com may not be the flashiest of names, but they are really good at helping you book your perfect trip with over 28 million hotels, resorts, motels, vacation rentals, everything in between. Booking.com has pretty much every kind of place for every kind of trip, which is helpful and easy, and that's pretty cool. Download the Booking.com app and make your next vacation easier. Booking.com. Booking.yeah. Easier. Booking.com. Booking.yeah.